So within that document is also the whole of society approach, which they want to adopt. Now, I am exceedingly critical of their vision of a whole of society approach, not least because it's completely unclear. I have had conversations with a few people about it who are slightly more generous about it and think I'm too critical, but I'm going to stick to my guns. I think that what the UK sees as a whole of society approach is incredibly limited, and there's so much more they could be doing.
Why would it be limited? Is it a consequence of politics? Is it the worldview that people have that needs to change? Why is it limited?
Yeah, so there's two reasons. First of all, is it will be limited by politics. It just will, because if we're looking at emulating the Finnish model, or at least borrowing from them, the thing that's completely absent is the sort of, you know, societal cohesion bit. That just doesn't even sort of enter into conversations about whole of society approach. They're not looking at creating any kind of sort of socioeconomic equality. They're not looking at building that defensive willingness. I've not seen anything in government documents, and I've read them for my sins because I hate myself enough to read government documents.
Someone's got to.
Yeah. They don't mention really anything about that. What they see as a whole of society approach. So that's number one, the sort of politics of it. And one of the reasons I think politicians don't want to see it is the UK is really struggling economically. I mean, one thing that the UK is really good at is papering over the ginormous cracks in our sort of society and defence and everything else. Like, we talk a big game, we're still seen on the global stage as a lot bigger and a lot more powerful than we are. A stat which blew my mind is that if you take London out of the UK and just look at the rest of the UK, GDP per capita is lower than Mississippi, which is the poorest state in the US.
No, really?
Yeah. So, like, when you look at all our statistics around wealth and income and GDP and all that, it's basically just London. Like, if you go outside of London, like, we are not a powerful state. If you look at if you take London out, our GDP per capita is like one of the, it's in the bottom half of Europe. Poorest 20% of our society is worse off than the poorest 20% of society in Poland. And now, Polish people might get offended when I say that, using them as a comparison. But the reason that I do that is because historically, especially sort of during the early sort of 2010s, late 2000s, early 2010s, there used to be a big thing about Polish immigrants coming over here to live a better life and make more money. Yep. And now you could argue, actually, it should be the other way around. We should be going to Poland because they're doing much better than we are. But that's all to say we're struggling a lot economically. If the government acknowledges that something that's key for security is to build sort of socioeconomic equality, the welfare state, education, healthcare, all that kind of stuff, if you need to bulk that out, they don't want to admit that that's key to defence, because defence is the number one priority of any government. You need to defend your sovereignty. So if you start tying in those social policies into your sort of defensive obligations, you're then up shit creek, because you actually have to start delivering those things, which the government is not going to want to acknowledge that they need to do.